Herbs are some of the most fun and most rewarding things to grow in the garden. However, if we don't take care of them, they aren't going to be as healthy, they're not going to be as productive, and certainly we're not going to get as much out of them as we could. So in today's video, we're going to be taking some tools from Centurion Tools, who have sponsored the video, and we're going to be talking about pruning herbs properly. Different types of herbs, as well as some general things to keep in mind. So there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind in general when you're pruning herbs. The first is not to take off more than about a third to a half of an herb plant at any one time, because that's going to sort of shock the plant and it can stunt growth, whereas taking off about a third or so is a really good idea to spur new growth. Another good idea is to prune. If you're pruning, the timing matters. And of course it's specific to individual plants, but a good rule of thumb is to not prune around 8 weeks or so before frost, because then all of that new growth that's coming out is going to get killed before it can kind of harden off and survive the winter, if it's an herb that can survive the winter. Now let's go ahead and figure out how to prune some of the most popular herbs that are probably in your garden. Let's kick it off with one of the most popular in the garden, which is of course basil. I have an African blue basil bush here that you can see has thrown out quite a bit of flowers. Now, when basil, especially an edible basil, is throwing out flowers like this, that's a sign that it's reaching the end of its life. It's actually starting to throw out and produce flowers and then seeds, and that can oftentimes change the taste of the actual basil. So what you want to do is certainly take those off to spur more vegetative growth, but the area in which you prune is going to determine how bushy and productive the basil becomes. So let's go ahead and take a look. So let's take this piece of the basil right here. What we could do is we could come through and just take off this entire flower and we're good to go, this flower spike. That's definitely going to help. You can see we've left two offshoots right here. There's one coming out right here and there's one coming out right here. We've got some more flowers, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off, and I'm going to go ahead and take that off, and now we have a section that's going to produce a lot more vegetative growth because we've taken off all the flowering spikes, and you can see more growth is going to come out of there, and as well out of here and here. Let's do one or two more of these just for an example, so you can see again we are cutting right about there. So we've cut off the entire flower spike, and in this particular case we're going to get new growth out of here, here, as well as up here in two different spots as well. It's basically like Medusa. You cut off one head, you get two more shoots coming out. Now what if, as is the case sometimes, even this section right here that we just pruned seems a little too bushy, a little too tall and unruly? Well, what you can do is you could take this off down to the next area where new leaves start to show up, because you're going to get some branching right outside of that leaf node. So if I wanted to, I could take this and I could cut just like this, and we've shortened it even more, and you can see there's actually a new offshoot coming out right there and an offshoot coming out right here. So that's another way to do it, just right above the next growth node. So let's go ahead and finish up this job. So there we have it with some simple micro-tip pruners. We've gone ahead and taken off quite a bit of this basil. Of course, if this was a basil that I used as an edible basil, it's more ornamental for me. I could use this in the kitchen, use it for herbs, spices, whatever the case may be. But for now, this will probably go into the worm bin, and we've pruned up our basil. So on to the next herb.